Not too long ago, I had the pleasure of attending the 75th anniversaries of the D-Day ceremonies at the National WWII Museum in New Orleans. One of the segments had a Q&A with 3 different World War II veterans who participated in the invasion of June 6, 1944. When we think of D-Day, we often think of the men on the beaches or the men jumping from the C-47s. The men speaking here had a somewhat different experience. What these men saw and went through was nothing short of amazing, and each veteran on the panel is a hero. So, thank you for taking the time to watch this dedication to the heroes of D-Day.
As is our tradition here at the museum, we always want to start by recognizing our World War II veterans. Do we have any World War II veterans with us this afternoon? If so, please stand or wave and be recognized for us. Do we have any women and men who served on the home front during World War II with us today? Any Holocaust survivors with us here today? We'll make sure to recognize their experience as well. And then finally, all our veterans post-World War II, please stand or wave to be recognized. Today, it is my great pleasure to introduce our D-Day veteran panel. First, Tolley W. Fletcher was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He grew up in Devon Springs and Baton Rouge and joined the Navy when he was 17. He then went through boot camp and continued with training as a gunner's mate. He first served aboard the USS New York and participated in Operation Torch in North Africa. After escorting convoys to Casablanca, he participated in the landings at D-Day in 1944. He was transferred to the USS SC-1301, a submarine chaser, and spent time in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. Fletcher was discharged in October 1945 as a gunner's mate, 3rd class. Vito Mastrangelo was born in Visalia, California. He was drafted in the Army at the end of his first semester of college. He completed basic training and was placed in charge of a squad of 25 men in the 3rd Platoon, 607th Quartermaster Braves Registration Company, and sent to England. His training consisted of how to plan the cemetery. Mr. Mastrangelo landed in Normandy, and his first sight was a driver of a Jeep who had been shot between the eyes. They moved through France to spend 3 months in Belgium, where during the Battle of the Bulge, they buried around 350 bodies a day. He was asked to stay after liberation to help relocate bodies from Belgium to the United States. Mr. Mastrangelo was discharged from the Army in 1945 as a tech sergeant. Third, Mr. Henry Arthur DuBay served in the U.S. Army Air Corps in World War II. He enlisted in July 1941 and served in the 12th Air Force 313th Troop Carrier Squadron in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy from 1942 to 44. In 1944-45, he was part of the 9th Air Force 34th Troop Carrier Squadron in England, France, and Germany. He received the Air Medal, Theater Medal with 8 bronze stars. Our moderator for today's panel is my colleague, Anna Daly. Anna has worked as a historian at the National World War II Museum since 2015. Since joining the museum, she has traveled the country extensively, conducting oral histories with World War II veterans and Holocaust survivors. She's conducted thus far more than 500 oral history interviews to date, several of which are showcased in our permanent galleries. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our panel.
special for you when you were in England?
Flew C-47 transport, towed the giant gliders, flew paratroopers. We also flew fuel and ammunition to the front lines. And after the war, we also flew the prisoners of war that had been taken prisoners back to the homeland, France. So, we flew in. We flew formation. There were about 3,000 planes in my group, and we had to contend. We went in at 800 feet. That allowed the parachutes to open, but at the same time, it was just above the machine gun fire. Everybody got their 80-pound gear with them before you jump. Okay. Fighter, and we stayed below, we had to stay below 3,000 feet so that either the paratroopers or the gliders could come down. And above 3,000 feet, the howitzer shells would explode and it blow the plane up. So 800 to 3,000 feet was a comfort zone, let's say. Weather was bad. You heard gunfire, cannon, and so on, and you always hoped that you weren't flying over where the fortifications were. You couldn't see, you couldn't recognize your targets ahead of time. We had one navigator for every 8 planes, and if the navigators got lost, we got lost too. So, that's it. Any questions? Fun trip, but I wouldn't want to do it again.
Mr. Fletcher, after you had already participated in the North Africa campaign, what did you think of the upcoming D-Day invasion? What did you think of the upcoming D-Day invasion?
Well, primarily I thought England was going to sink with everything that was going on. All of the soldiers and equipment that was stacked everywhere that you could see. And there was much excitement, of course, and people were worried about attack that was going to happen and how effective it was going to be. So, all of us were quite concerned about when and what part we were going to be taking. And as it turned out, our job was to escort. I was on the subchaser 1301. It was a small wooden craft with a shallow draft, and they used us to escort landing craft into the Utah beach. And primarily because we had radar and that type of gear, so that we knew exactly where to take them, so that they would get to the proper landing. It got pretty noisy for a while on the way in, and I was sure was very lucky we had no damage, whatever, or no one got hurt. And it was the most shocking part was on your way in when you see all the bodies that were already in the water. We were there very, very early on the first day, June the 6th. And of course, you were quite unsure of what was going to happen. We had no trouble with our job that we had to do. In situations like that, you pretty much have your mind, go ahead and do what you want to do. And soon as we got our troops to the shore, we turned around and our job was to search for submarines and vehicles. That's pretty much what our job was on that particular day. You know, I suppose you say we just did it, right?
Mr. Fletcher, what were your thoughts at the time of the men that you were helping get to the beach? Sorry, what were your thoughts at the time of the men that you were landing on the beach?
I don't really know what I thought you were at that time. I mean, landing on the beach. We had been concerned with all the bombs starting when they started unloading from the transport. The seas were so rough that the landing craft were bouncing up and down probably 3 to 4 feet, and the guys coming down off those rope ladders were in dangerous condition. And once they were off, the water was still so rough that the water spray was going over into the landing craft while it was going in. And at that point, we were concerned whether they would even be able to make it in there because the water was so rough. But we knew that there would be people that didn't make it once they got there. In a way, we really lucked out because we happened to be going into the area where there was really the least resistance of any of the 5 different places where they made invasions. And it was lucky because of that, our troops were able to make a good swing around and get a good landing area so that they could protect it. And as it turned out, it was really a good thing that that particular area was under really heavy defensive positions.
Mr. Mastrangelo, as being part of the 667 Quartermaster Graves Registration Company, what were you told about your job after the invasion?
Well, we really knew what we had to do. We trained for it in the States. After basic training, you have to go to a technical school taught by civilians at that time. And I think they wanted to make a mechanic out of me. I didn't want to write knocks and things like that, falling under cars. So I failed. So they called me in the headquarters. Says, we're going to serve the new truck team. And if you qualify, you're going to go from multi-crack to staff sergeant. Hey, that paid about $20 more a month. That was big money back then. You go ahead on the average for $20 a month. So I went into this headquarters. They said if you qualify, here, this company is called Graves Registration. I didn't know what the words meant, but I found out very soon. First place they took us is to Denver General Hospital. Is to see an operation performed on a dead man. The soldiers that walked out that day never qualified. But I remember the $20 for a month. I stuck it out. Then we moved over to Portland, Oregon. They found a man that drowned in Columbia River. We trained how to bury the dead.
What was it like when you landed on the beach?
Chaos. What we trained for and what we saw, that was two different things. Two different things. Engineers went in first, removed moving crap off those things on the beaches. And they all didn't survive. So that somebody had to take care of them. We couldn't get up on the bluff. If you see Private Ryan at the cemetery there, we couldn't get up there for a week. So we buried 468 right there on the beach. What held us back? Somebody was firing down at us all week. Finally, they sent up three rangers up there. They found the person killed her. That way we were able to get up on high bluffs. And that's where Normandy Cemetery is at this time and forever. 3 months later, in early September, by that time we had buried 18,000. Today there's only 9,000 there. The other 9,000 came back from the States. So when I went back 50 years later, everything looks different to me. I asked, what happened here? What happened is there were so many empty graves, they had to consolidate the whole cemetery over again. My time, they put wooden crosses. When I went back 50 years later, marble crosses. And what a beautiful cemetery. Beautiful. So, in early September, they broke through that same old France, and we proceeded up to Paris. But the Americans could go in first. We had to wait for the British troops. So we spent a day or two on the outskirts of Paris. And from there, there was a few temporary cemeteries in northern France. Those bodies were taken up soon after, buried in permanent cemeteries. From there, we moved into Luxembourg, then into Belgium. There's another cemetery there called it's a beautiful cemetery, and there's 18,000 buried there too.
So I have a question. When you were burying the dead, and sometimes reinterring their bodies,
Yes.
you talked about beautification of the cemetery.
Yes.
Could you
Yes.
say about that?
When the Battle of Bulge started, our captain said we had to beautify the American cemetery and also the German cemetery. In case the Germans broke through, we had to show that we all also cared about the German dead also.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions.
Yes.
So what comes to mind when you think about it now? This is a question for each one of you. When you think about 75 years ago today, what do you think of?
What I think about, I never forget the dead bodies. I never forget. 2 years ago, we went back to Belgium, and I wanted to go with the Duchess of DuBay. cool wind. I went back to that cemetery around. It was early morning. My legs are not well anymore. I couldn't walk down to the boys. I have to be on boys. Every day. Every day. I was in church there a couple of weeks ago. And the priest says, "Any veterans in here? Please stand." I told him my story. I said, "Well, I can't forget." He says, "You have to." That's why there's so many veterans committing suicide. The veterans. The VA was treating me as 100% disabled. I got PSD, PSD, something, A or something like that. The VA's treating me well. I can't complain. I can't complain. Yeah. Okay.
All right, Mr. DuBay. So what comes to your mind? Your mind when you think about D-Day 75 years ago today?
We'll keep this memory going as part of our heritage, and we need patriotism to build a good country. Without patriotism, the nation falls apart. And, very important, really, to have these kind of groups. I hope it will continue to live forever. Incidentally, as a child, my dad used to introduce me to Civil War veterans. I knew about plenty of them. And here we are, this quite a long time ago. And, I hope for children in the audience, say when they're 95 years old, they'll say, "I used to know World War II veterans."
Last but not least, Mr. Fletcher, what comes to your mind when you think about D-Day 75 years ago today?
D-Day pretty much lined up my life to some extent. The discipline and everything that went into my training to go into these things. And as it turns out, apparently it made a vast difference as far as Europe and especially Germany and in relation to the Soviets. I went back to Normandy about 40 Egypt. Everything has changed so much, and of course, you see the huge cemeteries where we were on, probably 15,000 graves that paid the price for it. So, how would we not? But it was a touching thing to be able to go back there and see the changes. Spent a lot of time in France while I was there. And it really, I met quite a few people that knew I was a veteran. And there were one or two that really acted like that they appreciated the fact that we had come. And that bothered me a little. But our country has, I felt like our values in this country, I felt like it really gone down since and the way people were in World War II. But I won't preach it.
Sorry, give us 1 second. There's going to be someone with a microphone coming around.
How old were each of you then?
Me,
All three of you, yes, sir.
I was 19.
I was in the age not 18, came out of age 22.
We're on the born on June 6, how old were you? 1944, if you remember, sir.
I was in 1920.
And you, sir?
I was 20 on May the 2nd. We landed on D-Day, the 6th of June.
I just hope everyone
We
here,
were all together in, you know,
I just hope everyone here.
yeah,
Thanks, Doc.
thank you.
They're children.
I have 19. I never forgot. I got the red mind yet. We used to dates and places, things like that. And when I start reminiscing, I tend to break up a little bit. I'm sorry. Very sorry. I'll tell you,
Please keep talking about it.
those boys were well cared for. Don't worry about that. You see to it. You see to it.
Your Royce, 19 years old, it's just unbelievable. Thank you so much.
It's amazing what these young men did at that time. Why did we stand here planning, you know, and other opportunities we had to do. And I tell you, we trained with buddies for 2 and 3 years. I mean, 30 or brother. I cried my eyes out when the first guy started going. You had to have 90 points to go home. So it took me a few months to get the 90 points. I finally went. I went home December 1st, 1945, and I got home at Christmas Eve. My folks never knew what I did. My father lived for home.
50 years. And I do master every day. You see this and you see that and you see that. You see all these tragic things that happen in school, and you broadcast something over and over every day for a week before they get off on something. Thank you.
Your question?
When you were waiting to go in on the shore, things were in pretty good order. But when did you begin to realize that it was getting to be chaos? And when did you decide that things were coming back into order for our men?
When did you first realize it was complete chaos?
Well, war is chaos, so it doesn't come as a surprise. Actually, this was the first time that they had used airborne, and they didn't know, for example, that there would be tremendous turbulence, and they didn't realize that they could not consider the weather factor, for example, which if you throw a monkey wrench, and there's ground fire, there's shells going off, fumes, and the visibility is bad. And anyway, it's a calculated risk, and you make allowance, and you go with the flow, I guess. And if you have a severe force, you're the winner. Did I answer your question?
Mr. Fletcher, if you would like to take a go. When did you first realize it was complete chaos? Is this gentleman's question.
There's not a standard rule. It's kind of like Murphy's Law. You go into a huge operation like this, you make all of these detailed plans, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, that's going to happen. As soon as you get into business, it all goes to pop. That's when you get everything on this stuff. There's nothing going to go on. You made all these plans, but things are going to go exactly like you predicted. That's when chaos starts. Just immediately after you start the thing.
And Mr. Mastrangelo, when did you first realize it was complete chaos?
As soon as I got on the shore, it was nothing like we trained. We didn't know. But we really found out real fast what we had to do. You had to clean the beaches. That was our job.
Chrissy, do you have one more question?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
No? Oh, it should be good.
Hi, guys. No?
Turn it. Oh, it's not on? Yeah. Let's do that first.
Well, yeah. Again, thanks, guys, for not letting us again. And looking back at the war now, if you had a chance to do it all over again, would you?
Mr. DuBay, before we start, if you had to do it all over again, would you? If you had to do it all over again, would you?
Certainly. But not at my age. I'm sure it's becomes an impossibility.
I think that most of us will do it again. We might wish we could do a few parts of it out. No doubt, we would have. After all, we were kids. We really didn't have very much fun. And asked me how old I was for Normandy, well, I was 19. For the North African days, I was 18. But yes, I would do it again.
Yes, sir. I'm a Navy veteran, and I served air crew with a lot of non-vets, and they wouldn't talk to civilians about a lot of things that they went through. And I understand why, because they talk to us, to the rest of their air crew. My father was in the 735th Railway Operating Battalion, all through Europe. He came in a little while after D-Day, and he never spoke about one word of it through his whole childhood that I know of. But he did give me his discharge papers, and he said when he was gone that I could learn about what happened, and luckily I did through some of the other relatives of these people. I'm just happy that you guys are able to tell your story to these people. It's a very important story. And I wish my father would have been able to. So thank you.
We're kind of glad we can tell them truth.
The Iraqi vets, the World War II, the Vietnam and Korean in Long Island, New York, and she's a therapist, and she published in Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul 4 times. And the last time, she talked about how you do your own therapy. And one of the things I noticed is that there are ways to handle post-traumatic stress syndrome. So for example, she had a Vietnam vet that worked in the cemetery, and every time it rained, he had flashbacks. So she moved him out of the cemetery, and he got cured.
I just met Grover over here. He lies about his age. He's turning 98, but he's 96. He also was, he also was in the Air Force. All did. But I guess you're also shy about it, because you should be sitting up there with those guys. Anybody else who's being a little shy and doesn't want to be seen up so we can recognize you? Thank you so much for the service. Y'all were training for a long period of time before you went into battle. But once you went into battle, how many days or maybe weeks went by before you felt that the confidence that you had would lead to victory over World War II?
Yes.
After being battle, how long was it to the confidence you had that you would be victorious, that the U.S. would be victorious?
We were watching the events in the Pacific, actually, and that was Midway was a turning point there, so it looked hopeful right when we were victorious at Midway. In Europe, it was. It seems for sure that the Allies were going to be victorious because the work that was going on in the United States, producing ships, believe me. As we developed submarine measures and developed countermeasures, and step by step, it seemed to be going our way. You know, the first victory was when Rommel was defeated in Africa, and then Mussolini retired to Italy, and then after Normandy, we were moving towards Germany step by step by step. So it looked like a sure thing right from the start. And we gave it our best. That's it.
Thank you all for your wonderful stories. I'd like to ask the C-47 pilot, I suppose you were a pilot, how did you know when to release the paratroopers? After you crossed into France, how did you know when the troops would get out of the airplane?
Well, remember there were 3,000 planes, for example, with navigators on board, and they had targets. They knew essentially whether if we were off target by 10, 15 miles, they knew at least their navigation was good enough that they knew where the drop should be. And the signal really, there was radio silence, but there were flash blanks. And they would, even in each plane, there was a drop line. And when that came on, that was a time to jump. That's what happened.
During the war, what were your thoughts on the other Allied powers or Axis powers, the countries you were fighting with or against?
What were your thoughts about the other allies and Axis powers while you were in
I think the best thing for the Allies was when Germany attacked Russia. And it certainly took a lot of the load away from the other people, from the Allies, and being able to get things going. And whenever we began to hear about all of the things that the Germans have done to the Jewish people, among others, it certainly made a difference. Of course, that was really important. But one of the largest mistakes that was made in that war is that Churchill and Roosevelt sort of let Stalin push him around, and he made all these agreements that was going to take place after. And it eventually turned out all right. Of course, Germany really suffered, right? And which they well referred to their previous activities. Russia was pushing so hard to get the invasion started before everyone was ready to do it. That made us make a few mistakes in our time. But everything turned out eventually.
Question over here. Again, we thank you for your service. Yes. Yes, thank you for your service. We're very indebted to you. You've expressed that effectively. I know that letters from home were very important. I wondered how often you received letters and how they affected or sustained you
I was not much of a writer. I'm still not. And at that time, we had V-mail going back to the States. It was a very small postcard sized letter, and I don't know how it was transmitted over wire to the States. You could never read or write where you were, what you did. So inspectors would throw those V-mail cards out. So that's how we corresponded. I didn't write home too often. No, I know I should have, but I didn't. Especially after my brother passed away in India. He was in the Air Force. He's a mechanic. I don't know if I said this before. He's a mechanic for those planes going over into China every day. And he got killed on R&R, of all places.
Well, before, when we felt that the war was well in hand, if you had been there on D-Day and seen those thousands of planes going over, they were virtually in every direction. You couldn't help but see hundreds and thousands of planes going over. And a short time later, you see the next day coming back from over. And there's no doubt that things are going in your favor when you have that sort of superiority in the air. So within 2 weeks, when the ground troops had their footholds set down, you know it was close to it.
More questions? Hi, with the knowledge and experience that you have on the board, what one piece of advice would you tell your younger selves?
With your knowledge and everything you went through, what piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Democracy is not for free. You have to work for it. If you're going to come out ahead, you got to make a contribution. The hardest got to be in it. Actually, you got to by counting your blessings, you have to put an effort in it. Pray to God, be a decent human being, be patriotic, go for it, and hope for the best. And God will do better.
Same question. What advice would you give your younger self?
I think we need to start by raising our families somewhat to the standards that they were previous to World War II. Things have changed so much that so many of the new parents think that they need to be friends with their kids instead of being parents, and raising them so that they have thinking of their own, so that they can plan and raise their own life, and they have time to do that, to keep our country on the straight line instead of all of these. I know it's not about the war, but it's about the country. And the country's in desperate need of having these people to to be able to think for themselves instead of having somebody else trying to brainwash them and what they think is comfortable.
This. I know your parents probably would disagree with me. Over in Europe, everyone of age 18 serves 2 years in the military. The only thing my dad never gave me a compliment, but I understood Italian that he spoke to my mother. He went away and the little boy came back a man.
Thank you all so much for taking the time out of your schedules, traveling to the museum, and standing all of these questions today. We really appreciate it. Thank you.